The year was 2018, and during this year I got my hands on 4 Zelda games: Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, Oracle of Seasons, and The Legend of Zelda. Upon playing these 4 games, only one really engaged me: A Link to the Past. The others I mostly dismissed, and in some cases actively disliked. One of those games was the first Zelda. The Legend of Zelda was one of those games I could never click with for years. Progression was obscure, the combat was overly difficult, and god this game looks old. And I never really completed it. Until now. Back in March I released a tier list video on Zelda games. Most of the games I ranked on there I hadn't played for years, so my opinions on them are quite outdated. So, the other day I was thinking about that video and realised I should go back and play a bunch of Zelda games to re-establish my opinions on them. Also, while I'm at it, I can make a video out of them, so I decided to record some gameplay. The game I started with, of course, is the first Zelda. Now, I was dreading this playthrough. It took me a month to actually start it. However, the other day I had nothing else to do. I was bored, so I opened up a guide to play this game along with. And then I turned on my Switch and I started playing. So, did I absolutely despise it like I was expecting to? No. In fact, I really liked it. Maybe I could go as far to say, I loved it. I literally went through some character development. I played through this whole game in one sitting, and quite honestly, it was one of my favourite gaming experiences in a while. So that's why I just kind of wanted to talk about this game today. So yeah, sit back, relax and listen to my rambles about a 36-year-old game. So, let's talk about the story of The Legend of Zelda. Spoiler warning by the way, for a game with absolutely no story. Yeah, you heard me. This game literally has no story. In fact, the only way you can really get a sense of the story is by reading the vague intro or the manual, so I'll be giving a brief summary of this amazing world-changing story. Hyrule was at peace, until it wasn't. An army of monsters, led by Ganon, invaded the kingdom of Hyrule and stole the Triforce of Power. Zelda, fearing Ganon, decided to split up the Triforce of Wisdom and spread it across the 8 levels. She also told her nursemaid Impa to go out in search of someone with enough courage to destroy Ganon. Ganon would end up imprisoning Zelda and sent out a search party in search of Impa. After travelling for miles, Impa would find herself cornered by Ganon's henchmen. A boy appears and saves her from these evil henchmen. This boy is called Link. Impa tells Link everything, so he decides to help Zelda to destroy Ganon. He travels across the land in search of the many pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom to obtain the power to face Ganon. After obtaining many items on his journey, he enters Death Mountain, where he finally fights and defeats Ganon. He saves Zelda and the game is over. So basically this is the same story as Super Mario. A big scary monster kidnaps a blonde princess, you play as a silent random guy, and he defeats the big monster. Even the end credits of Zelda 1 sounds like a Super Mario game. So, what are my opinions on this story? Well, to be completely honest, I don't really have any. It's so basic there's literally nothing to talk about. And I think that's fine. It is one of the first, if not the very first, open world adventure game. A simple story for such an old game to me feels completely fine. With the story out of the way, let's talk about the big thing, the game itself. Firstly, this Zelda game is played in a top-down perspective, sometimes switching to side-scrolling, however that is extremely rare. The top-down gameplay is used in a number of Zelda games and it works really well. Next, let's look at the swordplay, which unfortunately is one of the worst aspects of this game. Unlike future top-down Zelda games, Link doesn't swing his sword, instead he pokes it forwards. Due to the sword only affecting the area directly in front of Link, it leaves a large gap for enemies to come in and strike you. Due to how precise with the attack you have to be, there were many moments where I felt as though I should have hit the enemy, but it didn't register, and instead they ended up killing me. It happened a lot, so eventually it just got really annoying. Now let's look at another method of attack. The bomb. It's not that crazy to think about what the bomb does. It blows things up. Next we have the bow and arrow. Probably due to hardware limitations, unlike other Zelda games, the way to restock your arrows is actually by collecting rupees. Every time an arrow is used, you will lose 1 rupee. This may sound annoying, however you probably won't be using the arrow that often. The next item we'll look at is the boomerang. When you throw it, the boomerang will come back to you. You can upgrade the boomerang quite early in the game into the magical boomerang, which is more powerful and can stun enemies. Not much to talk about here, it's just a useful item. Next we have the magical rod, which in my opinion is literally one of the most useless items in the game. When you obtain it, you would have had the arrows for quite a while, and they can't be used to kill certain enemies you'd most likely want to use it on, including the whiz robe. I never found myself using this item, the only time I did was when I first got it. You do get an upgrade to it with the magic book, but like I said, I literally never used it. Probably the worst item in the game. Well, that's it for basic gameplay. There's nothing too special here, but I don't really mind that. This is the first Zelda game after all, and to be honest, it's quite impressive how they got all these different items to work on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Finally, let's look at 2 items that aren't really used for attack, rather defense. The blue and red rings. Firstly, these 2 items change the colour of Link's tunic to blue or red respectively, and they increase his defense. The blue ring halves the damage inflicted on Link, while the red ring turns it into quarters. They are honestly extremely broken, especially the blue ring, which you can get as soon as you start the game if you know where to look. Combat is all well and good, however, the area where I feel the game really shines is the overworld exploration. Upon starting the game, you are set free in this open world. You can literally go pretty much anywhere. Just make sure you head into the cave in front of you first, as that is the location of the sword. And with that, just go anywhere you want. You can head to pretty much every dungeon if you so choose, and you can reach nearly every corner of the map. Upon starting this playthrough, I decided to knock out some side quests out of the way. I found secret grottos where I got a lot of money. I went shopping for items such as bombs, and I began collecting heart containers, which of course are a Zelda staple. Heart containers increase the maximum number of hearts by 1. When I had a total of 5 hearts, I decided to head to the very north of the map, in an extremely dangerous area, and obtain the white sword. A much more powerful sword than the basic one. With my new sword, I headed out and continued to explore. I found another item in my travels, the candle. The candle is a very useful item. It's used to burn down trees, and it can light up really dark rooms and dungeons. The magic rod can also do this, however, who really cares about the magic rod? Anyway, with this candle, I headed to a lone bush and burnt it down, revealing a secret. I found a small grotto with a moblin who gave me 3 rupees. Another thing I did was head out in search of a secret shop, which was located under an Armos. The shopkeeper was selling the blue ring. After this, I finally headed to the first dungeon. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Before the first dungeon of the game, I explored all over the map, finding secrets, and I got really powerful early on. Yeah, sure, I used a guide for pretty much all of these things, but the sense of exploration still stuck with me. It's honestly impressive how much is in this game, and this is still only before the first dungeon. In the dungeons throughout the game, you will be able to obtain even more items that you can use to explore, including the raft, which allows you to travel across bodies of water, and the step ladder that allows you to walk across small gaps of water. Another cool item you can obtain is the recorder, which of course plays a familiar tune. Honestly, it's so cool how so much of this game, down to the musical motifs, influence future Zelda games. The recorder is used to teleport Link to previous dungeons on the map, and it is also used once to reveal a future dungeon found underneath a pond. The items are used in so many ways, and I love how they can interact with the environment to reveal secrets. I believe the original vision of this game was to be an adventure that kids could share with friends. They would play the game and find cool little secrets in the environment. At school they would tell their friends about these cool little secrets and it would spread among them. Which is why I believe there are so many items in the game and so many secrets to find. To me, this is what the original Legend of Zelda is about. Stories, going through your own individual adventure, your own legend if you will. And this is why I love the overworld in this game, and why I think it's absolutely spectacular. The overworld, of course, is obviously not all the Legend of Zelda has to offer. In fact, most of your time playing this game will be in the dungeons. Dungeons are a Zelda staple, however they work slightly differently in this game to other games. Dungeons are extremely similar to the overworld. There is not one set path through a dungeon, and you can bomb certain walls to reveal secret paths, where you can skip key doors and not waste one of your precious keys. You see, keys carry over from dungeon to dungeon, so you want to save as many up as possible. Unlike other Zelda games, keys actually run out. So if you do end up running out, you can always buy some from the shopkeepers around Hyrule. Dungeons are places where you have to solve puzzles and defeat enemies. However, in this game especially, dungeons are more combat focused. Puzzles are mostly relegated to push this block and a secret set of stairs will appear. So most of the time in these dungeons you will be facing enemies. For the most part, these enemies are easy. However, there are two that are extremely difficult and annoying. The Wizrobe and the Darknut. These two enemies are fine when they are in small groups of 3 or 4. However, for some bizarre reason, in the late game, they throw hordes of these devils at you. Sometimes it just gets completely hectic, and I have died so many times. The worst rooms when fighting these guys are the ones where the balls of fire are also coming at you, and the ones with the bubbles. Oh, the bubbles. The bubbles disable your attack, and they also knock you back. I have died so many times to these idiots, because they've trapped me in a corner where I can't escape, they hit me, I'm knocked backwards into an enemy, usually a Wizrobe, I can no longer attack, and that Wizrobe ends up killing me. Bubbles are so annoying, and they make the game so unfairly hard. So, looking at the normal enemies in this game, and how hard they are, you'd probably expect the bosses to be even harder than that. No, not at all. Every boss in this game was a breeze, even Ganon the final boss. The only bosses that I struggled with were the Gleeok fight and Manhandler. Aquamentus is cool but stupid easy. The Dongo shouldn't have even been a boss, it's literally that easy. They literally become normal enemies later on. And oh my god, don't get me started on Dig Dogger. Dig Dogger is probably the easiest boss in the entire series. It is probably easier to defeat than a lever. You literally just play the recorder, it shrinks, and you kill it in 2 hits. So to be honest, the bosses are hit or miss. The bosses have the opposite problem to enemies like the Darknut and the Wizrobe. They're just too easy. I think Gleeok is the right level of difficulty though, for a boss in this game, in my opinion, as they can be quite hard to deal with, but aren't overly stupid and unfair. So, in conclusion, looking at the enemies in the dungeons, although iconic, in my opinion aren't very good. They are either too hard to defeat, or too easy. Of course their designs are amazing though. The dungeons in The Legend of Zelda, however, are overall okay. They aren't the best in terms of puzzles and combat. However, since they carry over the exploration of the overworld, it boosts my opinion on them as a whole. Now, I have praised the overworld a lot in this game, and finding secrets. However, I wanted to have this small section at the end where I want to bring up a bit of a criticism about the overworld. There is unfortunately one massive thing that holds it back, and to be honest, you can probably expect what I'm going to say. It's just impossible to know where any of these secrets are. There is literally no indicator to show whether you can bomb a wall or burn the bush. Everything looks the same, they're all part of the same texture. Now I know that these are literally supposed to be secrets, so you're not really supposed to know about them. However, some of these secrets are required for progression. One literally leads you to a dungeon. So a solution to this I believe is quite simple. Just slightly change the textures. I don't think you should change them too much, so they can still be a secret and easy to miss. However, still make it possible to find without using guides or trying to blow up every tile on the world map. Because I just believe this is the biggest issue with the game. If this aspect was slightly changed, I believe this game would probably be viewed more highly, but just because of this one small thing, it puts a lot of people off, and it's quite unfortunate. However, with that all said, The Legend of Zelda was still a masterpiece in game design for its time. It revolutionised gaming, introducing features such as saving, and of course being one of the first, if not the first, open world game ever made. Of course, compared to today's standards, the game has aged. However, with my recent playthrough, I have come to appreciate this game even more, and even though it isn't even in my top 5 Zelda games, I can safely say that I now love this game, which is something I probably wouldn't be saying at the start of this year. This game laid the groundwork for every Zelda game afterwards, and kickstarted my favourite video game series. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. This was a different kind of video. I wanted to do something a bit different for this. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. I would appreciate it a lot. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.